Welcome to the deep dive. This time we're heading into fantasy territory. Specifically, we're looking at Glen Cook's The Swordbearer. Just the early parts, though.
Right, the opening chapters. We've got some key excerpts.
Yeah, and the idea is to really unpack what they tell us about the world, the characters, the setup, the initial conflict and mysteries.
Exactly. Think of it as getting the lay of the land. What are the stakes right at the start? Who is this protagonist? What forces are moving?
And one of those little threads that kind of pull you in.
Those early mysteries, yeah. That's our mission here.
Okay, let's jump in then. Gathrid, he's our main guy.
Yep.
What's your first impression? He's not exactly Conan, is he?
No, definitely not. That's actually was pretty cool. We first see him, daydreaming about being a hero while his brothers are doing the actual work. And there's that little detail about Belthar having to take him to his mother. It hints he's maybe not the most physically capable, sets him apart. What do you think?
That makes him feel more real, I guess. Not some perfect warrior out of the gate. He wants glory, but maybe he's not quite built for it yet.
Right. Makes you wonder how he's going to handle things.
And his family seems, complicated.
Absolutely. You've got the sister, Anyek, wanting a different life, wanting to reclaim their mother's old status.
Yeah.
Safarina, was it?
Yeah, Safarina suggests some history there, maybe some lost standing.
For sure. And then Simon, the brother, he's terrified of this Eastern darkness. It's not just a vague fear either, is it?
No, especially with Grevening having fallen, it feels very close.
It paints this picture of a family living under a shadow already, even before things properly kick off.
This Eastern darkness, then, that seems to be the big immediate threat. Ventimiglia, Mindak, Ahlert.
Yeah, and the way they talk about Ventimiglia's rise, especially with Ahlert pulling the strings, he's this sorcerer figure, right?
Seems like it, using wizardries and exhumations of ancient sorceries.
Exactly. So it's not just armies clashing. There's this suggestion of forbidden magic, of messing with things from the past.
Which makes the fall of Grevening feel like a preview for Gudermuth.
Totally. It's a clear warning sign. And it's not just regular soldiers they're up against.
Right. These mentions of Nieroda and the Toll, the dead captains, that sounds bad.
It really does. It ramps up the threat level, doesn't it? Invincible undead warriors. It's straight up horror territory. Simon's reaction, just hearing about them, tells you how terrifying they are. It's psychological, too. Makes you think about what kind of power Ahlert is really wielding.
So zooming out a bit, what about the bigger picture? The history, the politics. We hear about the fallen empire of Anderloa.
That's super important context. Anderloa already falling apart, the world being fragmented now. It tells you that even great powers crumble.
Leaves a vacuum, right.
Exactly. Create space for new powers like Ventimiglia to rise up. Maybe history repeats itself in this world.
And even the folks trying to stop Ventimiglia, these orders, they don't sound very united.
No, the text mentions their own conflicts. Even though they should have a common enemy, they're squabbling.
What exactly are these orders? Like knightly orders? Mages.
It seems like established factions. Could be military, maybe religious, maybe political groups. The point is, they should be working together against Ahlert, but their internal rivalries get in the way.
Makes that warning from Plowin about the Alliance being a beast of 100 heads seem pretty spot on.
Definitely. It highlights a major weakness right from the start.
Plowin also says Ahlert is after fell artifacts, so it's not just about conquering land.
Good point. That adds another layer, doesn't it? He's hunting for powerful, probably dangerous old objects, maybe things connected to Andal's fall.
Could be. It raises the stakes beyond just a war for territory.
Yeah, it feels bigger.
Okay, so all this is building up. The ultimatum comes. Ventimiglia's armies are massive, right on the border. Gudermuth looks doomed.
Absolutely. The sheer numbers are overwhelming.
Big.
And the Sapphire, the leader, he basically refuses to give up this great sword.
Which he says is just a myth anyway.
Right. But he still defies them, even though he seems resigned to Gudermuth falling. It's a kind of grim acceptance. Hopeless, really.
And then there are omens. A comet appears.
And it's apparently linked to some past conflict, the Brothers' War.
Feels like even the sky knows something bad is coming.
It does. It adds to the dread. But also, like you said, hints that history might be cyclical here. And Yek knows the story, so the past isn't forgotten.
And then, boom, the attack happens. Cacaleaf's walls are breached. Fast. Brutal.
Super fast.
Yep.
Shatters any sense of safety. And Nieroda and the Toll are right there, leading the charge.
The description of them just pointing and causing destruction.
Yeah, that's chilling. Shows how powerless normal defenses are against them.
So Gathrid has to run. His world just collapses.
Total chaos. He sees the fighting, the horror firsthand. No more daydreams.
And in that chaos, someone mentions the Sword of Suchara again. The legend.
Right. It pops up as maybe the only hope. Some ancient power that could actually make a difference.
Which leads him to, well, a very strange meeting. Rogala.
Rogala, the dwarf. Turek Arryn's old companion, who's been asleep for centuries.
Yeah, he doesn't even know what Gudermuth is. He's totally out of sync with the present.
Which is fascinating. He's a living piece of history. His confusion tells us just how much the world has changed since Anderly and Arryn's time.
He's like a walking history lesson almost.
Kind of, and hints that maybe the real story started way back then.
And then the legend isn't a legend anymore. Daubendiek, the great sword, it just appears.
Pretty much, like it's sensed the danger, maybe. And its first act is just devastating the toll.
Shows its power immediately.
Immense power. But there's also this hint, isn't there, that maybe the sword has its own agenda, or that wielding it isn't straightforward. There's a potential cost.
A double-edged sword? Literally.
You could say that, yeah.
Yeah.
So Gathrid and Rogala, they start their journey together. Gudermuth is burning behind them.
Grim backdrop. And Rogala starts dropping these names, these hints about the past. Before the fall, the immortal twins, Grelmner.
Little breadcrumbs. He's teasing this incredibly deep history. Ancient powers, forgotten figures. Makes you wonder how it all connects to Ahlert and Nieroda.
Meanwhile, Gathrid's struggling. He's grieving, scared, worried he'll end up like Ahlert, who sounds like he was pretty intense.
Bleak and driven, I think was the phrase. Yeah. Gathrid's afraid of losing himself to this, which is relatable.
Plus his mother and sister were taken, right, by the Mindak to catch.
Yes. That gives him a very personal reason to keep going. It's not just survival anymore. It's a rescue mission. A revenge mission, maybe?
So they eventually find their way to the Torun Alliance camp, this big gathering of forces supposed to fight Ahlert.
Supposed to, yeah. But it's clearly a mess. All of these different kingdoms, the Brotherhood, lots of different interests.
Just like Plown warned, the beast with 100 heads.
Exactly. You see it right away. Their internal politics might be as big a threat as Ventimiglia.
And there's more about Ahlert and Rogala's past. The question of whether the sword controlled Ahlert, that must be weighing on Gathrid.
Oh, for sure. It's a huge shadow hanging over him. Is he going to be the master of this weapon or its puppet? That's a central question now.
Rogala seems to know how to play the game, though. His maneuvering in the council tent.
He's clearly a manipulator. Always be late, he says. He understands power dynamics.
And that council scene itself.
Wow.
Kings, magisters, some emperor's representative. Everyone seems to be posturing.
Total chaos. Mjolnix is outraged about Hansa Eldracher and the Blue Order. Skinga calls him an opportunist. It just exposes how fragile the whole alliance is.
They're barely holding it together.
Right. And then someone suggests uniting under the old imperial banner.
And Rogala just shoots it down. Anderly is dead.
Powerful statement. He sees trying to revive the Empire as pointless, maybe even dangerous, and he warns them again about Ahlert's real goal, that it's bigger than they think.
So they decide to send Hansa Eldracher against Nieroda. Seems like a big task.
A huge one. And then Rogala says something cryptic again, about Suchara having her needs, and Daubendiek not working for free.
What do you make of that?
It reinforces the idea that the sword isn't just a tool. It's tied to something else, maybe this Suchara entity. It has its own purpose, its own price, adds more mystery.
Rogala then warns Gathrid, basically tells him not to trust anyone in the camp.
Smart advice, probably. He points out the main factions, who's aligned with who, seems centered around Keemok Falstitch.
And he mentions this old man, Hildreth. Senses he's important somehow.
Yeah, good intuition. Rogala's sharp. He knows politics, even after centuries asleep. And he suspects Hildreth is more than he appears.
And he's right. The old man turns out to be Count Eden Hildreth, an imperial observer.
From the Empire, which everyone thought was basically gone. He calls it a dream that slumbers.
Interesting phrase. So the Empire might not be completely dead after all.
Seems like it. Still has agents, still watching. Hildreth's focus on Gudermuth connects that larger imperial history right back to Gathrid's home.
Lots of layers here. Then Rogala throws out another curveball. He suspects Gathrid's sister, Aniek, might be a witch.
Based on, well, unexplained stuff, apparently. It's another thread dangling there. Hidden powers in Gathrid's own family.
Could be. Rogala also shares some cynical wisdom about war and politics.
Yeah. War is too important to trust to generals, then policy is too important to trust to politicians. Sounds like someone who's seen it all.
Definitely world-weary. And as they travel towards Kadich, he talks about how much the land has changed since the High Imperium, since the Immortal Twins.
Again, reinforcing that deep history. The world Gathrid knows is just the latest layer.
So they get near Kadich. Armies are gathering. It's Ahlert's unified force versus the Alliance's bigger numbers but divided command.
Classic strategic dilemma. Unity versus numbers. Skirmishes are already starting.
Gathrid and Rogala have a plan to sneak past Ahlert's main force, presumably to get into Kadich for his family.
Makes sense. But then, bam, magic attack. A witch comes out of nowhere, targeting Gathrid.
Right when they least expect it, and Daubendiek reacts instantly.
Fiercely. Protects Gathrid, fights the witch. Gathrid himself seems almost like a passenger while the sword does its thing.
So what happens after that fight?
Well, Hunter Eldreuther actually wins a battle against the Easterners outside Kadich.
Yeah.
A bit of good news for the Alliance.
But the sword, Daubendiek, its appearance is described as ominous again.
Yeah, even in victory or near it, there's this sense of unease about the sword itself. Its power is frightening.
And Gathrid crosses into enemy territory. He starts thinking about Ahlert again, about slaying kin.
He's starting to identify with Ahlert's path, maybe? Understanding the hard choices, the terrible things that war and maybe the sword force you to do.
Which leads him to this big resolution. He decides he needs to get rid of Daubendiek and Nieroda and the Toll, all of them.
That's a huge turning point for him. He sees them all as abominations. He's gone from daydreamer to, well, someone driven by a harsh purpose. Maybe a dangerous one.
So wrapping up this first look, we've got a huge threat looming with Ventimiglia, Ahlert, and these terrifying undead.
Definitely. Nieroda and the Toll are nightmare fuel.
We've met Gathrid, who's really not the hero he dreamed of being, at least not yet. Now he's stuck with this incredibly powerful, possibly malevolent sword.
Yeah. Daubendiek is maybe the biggest mystery so far. What is it? What does it want?
And we've got hints of this vast, complex history, fallen empires, ancient artifacts, maybe even witches in the family, lots of unanswered questions.
Absolutely. The stage is set. Gathrid's lost his home, gained immense power he doesn't understand, and he's on a deeply personal quest that's tied into these huge world events.
It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What's the actual cost of power, like Daubendiek? Can Gathrid control it, or is it going to control him?
That feels like the central struggle for him going forward.
And how will all these other players, like Rogala, Hildreth, maybe even Aniek, fit into his destiny? Thinking about Andali falling, it makes you consider if history is just doomed to repeat itself. Is the past always shaping the present in this world? Something to chew on.